it until it's live. Super annoying. Here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the WordPress Friday Hangout, where we deep dive into all things related to the world's most popular content system. Today, we're tackling a topic that's on the minds of many of us in the WordPress community. Is AI coming for your job? Very topical, isn't it? So to help us explore this question, we have not one, but two expert guest hosts joining us today. First up, we have Aaron Edwards, founder of Ugly Robot, technology consulting firm that specializes in developing AI solutions for businesses. Aaron brings a wealth of experience in AI and automation of the discussion and has worked with numerous organizations to improve their operations using AI-powered tools. And joining Aaron on the podcast today is Jonathan Williams, the founder of Oddjar, a WordPress development agency that specializes in building custom solutions for businesses. Jonathan has a deep understanding of the WordPress ecosystem and has seen firsthand how automation and machine learning are transforming the industry. So together, Aaron and Jonathan bring a unique perspective to the question of whether AI is coming for our jobs in the world of WordPress. They're going to share their insights on the ways in which automation is already impacting the industry and explore what the future might hold for WordPress professionals of all kinds. So whether you're a developer, a designer, a content creator, or simply someone who's interested in the future of work, you won't want to miss what our expert guest hosts have to say about the impact of AI on the WordPress ecosystem. So without further ado, let's jump into the discussion. So welcome, gentlemen, to the show. First off, little disclaimer, that was completely AI generated, that little intro. And I'm curious, I'd like to hear from Aaron and from Jonathan. How accurate was that description of what you both do? All I did is put in your names and your Twitter handle as the hosts and the title of the show, and that we're talking about it's a podcast about WordPress, and this is what was generated. So first off, Aaron, please, how accurate or not accurate was that? And fill in a little bit more about what you do and specifically around the world of AI.
Yeah, I would say pretty inaccurate.
I
can tell. I was like, where is this coming from? I was like, oh, he must have used ChatGPT for this. Yeah, but my day job, I work for WPMU DEV as the CTO. So just kind of broad overview, building systems, managing them, building APIs, all that kind of stuff. And more recently, I've been doing a lot of side projects. So whether it was Web3, now I've built a bunch of tools with AI more recently since Stable Diffusion came out, building WordPress plugin there. And I just built a chat bot for the WordPress Docs recently. And just launched another project too yesterday, which we'll talk about, I think.
Yeah, so not accurate at all. I had a feeling when I just sent it your Twitter accounts and I read it, I was like, he might have a few things to correct on that. So so maybe we're not too worried about AI taking over just yet, but that's what we're going to dive into. So Jonathan, same question, first, welcome to the show. How accurate was that description of what you do? And maybe tell us a little bit more and specifically around the world of AI, some areas that you've been dabbling with.
Yeah, so it's not terribly accurate, but that's probably has to do with more of just the generalized language on my business website, which it occurs to me I should update and niche down a bit. But it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad sounding. I mean, as far as generic marketing copy goes, right? That's a pretty good use case.
It is. And I actually sent out a few tweets promoting the show this morning and used purely AI generated content. So it's really fascinating playing around with things like chat GPT in the world of AI. And honestly, I can't think of a technology or just a term or buzzword in the world of technology that has exploded as quickly as AI has in the past just few months.
I guess, and I do want to also be careful. We keep saying we generated via AI. Can we please all call and I hate to be the fly in the ointment, can we just say we're using ChatGPT? We're not using AI in generalization. Let's not start making AI Band-Aid, right? Because Band-Aid is bandages, right? And Band-Aid is a brand that has become into the United States vernacular for a bandage, right? Mm-hmm. And we keep saying AI, but in reality, we're only using ChatGPT. It's one system, or OpenAI, which is one system. So I do also want to be careful to say that even though this AI did not do a good job, there's other AIs out there that are still being developed and no one's really using as OpenAI.
That's a great point. Maybe someone wants to take a stab at kind of defining, when we say AI, I think the first thing, at least for nerds like me, that come to mind is like the Terminator, right? Like that type of AI. But what we're talking about here,
Skynet.
luckily, isn't quite that advanced yet. So who wants to take a stab at kind of defining AI in the sense of where, we feel it's at today in the world of technology? So
sure, I'm happy to. Yeah, it is a very broad term. I think this latest revolution or whatever you call it that's going on right now, really it's involving what we call generative AI. So it's kind of a relatively newer use case for this technology that allows you to generate, whether it's text or now images and artwork, based on previous patterns that the model has learned in the past. So that's kind of like where we're seeing this, and it's just more recently come to a point where it really, at first glance, fools the human eye. It really excites us and says, "Whoa, this is amazing! It does this," But if you get really down to the depth of it, there's a lot of things lacking there still, which I think we'll talk about. But yeah, I think that's kind of the context that we're talking about now. When overall AI, it could be talking about specialized AI, which is what we've seen in the past, like self-driving cars or models that can detect like credit card fraud or different things like that, where it's specially trained for a specific use case. And then, of course, in the future, you have all the sci-fi stuff of a general AI that would be able to take over the world or whatever and be smarter than humans and all that kind of stuff. And I still think that we're very far from that. So I think what we're talking about here is mostly generative AI.
And I guess go ahead, Jonathan.
I was just going to say, in some sense, I think our popular cultural tendency to call any of these technologies AI does us all a disservice, because it makes us, I think, fundamentally misunderstand what we're working with at the moment, which isn't intelligence. It's a statistical match. It looks like intelligence, but it's not. It's statistics in a massive data set. And so, yeah, we just have this blanket AI term, and it's like you said, you're getting into Terminator territory, because that's the only model that we really have for it, is like science fiction movies and a sort of general intelligence. And when you say AI, that's just sort of what most people assume, I think, that it's thinking it's an intelligence like a human, because that's the only model we really have conceptually. But so much of the misunderstandings that I see specifically about ChatGPT is just people thinking that it's thinking, right? People thinking that it's intelligence and not fundamentally understanding that, like Aaron was saying, it's not thinking, it's generating, right? Which isn't intelligence. It's something else, and it's useful and it's fascinating, but it's not intelligence.
And that's also, related. And even before ChatGPT took off, I've been watching AI, because in my days working with Brad, and this is Brad, how long ago did we work at the journal together? 5 years ago now, 6 years ago. And every time, AI still was a buzz there in publishing, because people were like, can we just use AI on it? Can we just use machine learning for this? Wait, why do I have to tell you the categories of the blog? Can't we just use machine learning? And I think a lot of people, it was like a word you could pepper on. And my fear with AI right now, which again, we're specifically talking, in my opinion, publicly about OpenAI and ChatGPT, it is a way of devaluing intelligence among the white collar class. I don't mean to get into I'm not getting into politics right now, but essentially what happened was, the author of OpenAI even said this. He said that AI is not about deleting the $20 an hour jobs. And actually Google killed the robotics division. That's who they gutted first, because they're like, you know what? Making burger flipping bots is really hard. But making an AI that can write a blog post, that's actually kind of easy. And I'm sick of paying that guy $75 to $100 an hour. And so that's kind of where the AI is coming from this. And the AI that we're dealing with right now is almost like a robot, less so, more and then just for everyone, you can look this up, there's the stages of AI that, theorists and computer scientists use. There is rules-based, which we're literally dealing with a language learning model where it's billions of answers calculated in multiple different variations, and the training model is taught yes, no, this is correct, this isn't correct, here's to put together. But we're nowhere near context awareness, and it doesn't know, the AI bot, it's in a box, it doesn't know how to get into different systems, it doesn't know how to reason, it's not self-aware. And so I think a lot of people in the hype are putting that there, and there's almost this misplaced glee among business people of I can't wait to replace my entire team. And I think anyone who's drinking that Kool-Aid, they're in for a rough ride. And so that's I always want to be careful. When we say AI, it's not a silver bullet, it's not an ointment, and if you treat it properly, it's going to blow up your business.
We have a question in the chat room.
You're muted, Brad. What happened to your audio? Oh, there we go.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
No, so I'm not muted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So quick question from the chat room. And if you're not watching us live, please do join us live because we have a pretty active chat room and it's fun. From Doherty, he's asking, they are asking, can AI replace WordPress support related positions in the near future? And I think this kind of leads into some of the stuff that you've been working on a little bit, Aaron. I'd like to maybe tee that up, talk about the doc spot that you've been creating. And is this an area where it could take over support related positions within WordPress?
So I've just been playing with this technology and kind of just started out by building kind of an example demo tool, and that's Chat WP, I called it. And that's at wpdocs.chat. And basically, I just trained it on all the WordPress core documentation from WordPress.org. And basically, after learning all that, then it's able to answer questions based on what it's learned from that, which I think is pretty cool. And I had a lot of fun building that. And coming from that, I just kind of put a little waitlist sign up to see, is people interested in doing this for their own business, their own documentation or whatever it may be, and got a lot of good feedback from that and responses. So the last 3 or 4 weeks, I built docspot.ai, which basically allows you to do the same thing for your own business. So you can adjust your support documentation, your internal knowledge base, maybe your support ticket history even, and learn from that basically to be able to generate new responses in the future, to users' questions or your customers' questions. So, so far it seems to be working pretty well. I think that people get initially like super excited about it, and then they see that, okay, occasionally, sometimes it can make things up, sometimes occasionally it doesn't get things right because like Jonathan said, it's just patterns. It's learning patterns from your documentation, and it's predicting what text should come based on your question. And so it's not going to be perfect. We actually started testing like the alpha a few weeks ago on WPMU Dev for our support. So we have a little chat widget for our members, and that says, you can live chat or you can submit a ticket, or the top item is try our AI support, beta or whatever. And just to see how it goes, we train that based on first our whole documentation library, which was written in WordPress. And then also we just made a category of our blog of all the articles that were related to our products, tutorials and things like that. And so we trained it on all that content. And so far it's been pretty good. I think last I checked, the numbers were about 13% of users said it was unhelpful. Like the response that they got was unhelpful. So that seems pretty good for like a frontline support, as long as you have that human in the loop still, I think is the important part. So, I mean, we're kind of still experimenting with that, and it's never going to be like a panacea and replace jobs completely. But I think that it can make things a lot more efficient to the point where maybe you need less staff.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a serious upgrade to many of the like live chat, quote unquote live chat,
exactly
what that's evolved into, where it's not really live chat. You think it is, but you're really talking to a bot, and the bot sucks.
Yeah,
it's just
and
like
they're just recommending
like operator, and it doesn't know what, like it feels like we're upgrading that in a sense where it actually is going to be a bot, but it's going to provide more relevant information, at least at that front line, like you mentioned. But I certainly agree. I don't think, certainly now anyways, since we're so early into this on the public space, but where it's going to completely wipe out support roles, right? You have to have that human element at some point, because there's no way it's going to be able to satisfy every request that comes in.
Yeah.
Well, I just figured out as well. I mean, the use case for documentation or chat support is fantastic, because even most human-based chat support is pretty terrible. And that's actually one of the things that's fascinated me about this is not just the technology, but the reactions to it. There are people who are like, oh my God, I can write a web app or whatever program I want to do with absolutely no previous programming knowledge. I'll just tell it what I want, which is of course not true. But then you have people on the opposite side who seem to have a lot of emotional stake in trashing the technology and saying that it doesn't really have, any uses whatsoever.
Yeah. And that's not smart. I mean, I just posted an article from Help Scout, and the one thing they talk about is making sure to just let people know, like someone mentioned, like you didn't know you're talking to a bot, right? And what Help Scout talks about in their article about integrating AI into your chat support is to make sure that you are letting people know, like, hey, like in subtext, this is via AI. Let's get through your basic question first, and then we'll elevate you to support chat. So I think the lower level support people, the level 1 support people who are like, where is your problem? Please share a screenshot, etc. Those people, unfortunately, though, that job will be eliminated, right? But then the job of the more advanced engineer, I think the support role is going to become gathering information, gathering questions, and helping the bot to answer those questions again and again in the future, right? And that's what, like, I think if you, if I know it's AI, I kind of get really agitated. But if it's like, hey, self-service first, and I see this a lot in good experiences, they're like, I go to something and they have me self-service, and then when it's finally exhausted, they're like, oh, wow, you gave us all the answers and you're still not getting it. Okay, great. We're going to give you tier 2 or like a technical support person. And that's a good experience to me. It's when I see stuff where I'm like, hi, I need, my phone got stolen. I need to replace it. And it's like, hi, it looks like you're looking for a new phone. I'm like, oh my God. Like, you know, and that's where the AI is going to just drive people crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all finding a balance, right? And it's still early. You know, this is, again, I mentioned earlier on in the show how quickly this exploded, really, I think primarily because it's a quick and easy thing you can get into. Chat GPT. Anybody out there could quickly create an account and start asking questions. Whereas things like Web3, while that got, you know, exploded, was very popular, there's that very technical element you know, at the very front of getting involved in you know, crypto and NFTs and things like that. So it's, while it's still a big community, a lot of people involved in it, there's a barrier to entry, right? Like my parents aren't just going to log in and say, yeah, let me check out NFTs on day 1. But Chat GPT, anybody could log in and start asking questions. That's a pretty easy one. So it's really kind of exposed it to the masses.
That Chat GPT is useful, whereas crypto, still an open
That's
question.
A whole nother show, Jonathan.
Oh yeah, it's a whole
no, but
show.
not to poo-poo on crypto or hijack the topic, but I do think that part of, insofar as there is this camp that is, you know, sort of determined to disparage what LLMs can do and what Chat GPT can do, I think a lot of that sort of instinctive hesitancy or blowback is due to how quickly the hype over crypto spin up and how many of those claims didn't pan out. So I think there's like, and now that all the money's swinging to AI, I think a lot of developers even and are just sort of like got burned and are cautious to jump on another, what they think may be a hype wagon, which I think is a real shame, because I don't think LLMs or this new wave of tools is a hype wagon at all. I think it's going to fundamentally change the world in a hurry.
Yeah.
And Jonathan, you obviously have been playing with AI, and one of the reasons that your name popped up on the radar recently is for a plugin that basically you used a Chat GPT helped created a working plugin on your first try, and you were tweeting about it and kind of what you did, and I think it all kind of made us take a step back and say, wow, that actually is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just a functional plugin, but it's doing things like validating fields, you know, before saving, and like advanced level development that you would expect, you know, senior lead level developer to be able to do. So tell us a little about that. I'm curious, you know, what was the idea behind it and how the actual process of getting ChatGPT to create that plugin went for you?
Well, it's like most things, you know, I was on Twitter trying to avoid doing any work. And it was like, it was very soon after Chat GPT had been released. And I remember I had to write a bunch of boring code that day, as we sometimes do, you know, scaffolding and stuff like that. And I saw a link to Chat GPT and just clicked over and started playing with it, and just happened to say, you know, write me a plugin. I forget exactly what I asked it to do. It was a fairly simple plugin though. Like you said, I just needed it to do something, and I was looking for a proof of concept. But like you said, it did it. Like, it spit it out. It wasn't perfect. You know, there's some security issues in the first one that I did. Like, it didn't escape things properly and some other stuff like that. But it worked. Like, you uploaded it, you activated it, and it did the specific thing that I asked it to do. And I tried that a few more times. And those tweets just blew up. I think they got viewed more than anything else I've ever put on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't think many people realized, and myself included, that we're talking about like code generation here. When I first heard about Chat GPT, I'm like, oh, cool. It seems pretty neat. Let me get in there. And then I start to see people talking about it's writing code for them. Interesting. So I've been dabbling with Roblox development with my son, just playing around. Nice. He likes to play it. It's a good way to connect with him and kind of two worlds colliding, if you will. He loves games. I love programming. Here we go. Right. So we start making games. So I actually use ChatGPT to create some basic Roblox scripts for me because I'm new into that area. So it's a new language for me. Like it's all brand new. So I asked it to create a simple script that would just move an object forward, wait a few seconds, and move it backwards. And it spit it out. Within about 30 seconds, I had a copy paste code that I could put right on the object, and it did exactly what I wanted to do. And as a new developer in that space, as a seasoned developer, learning a new language sometimes can be a little bit frustrating, right? Because, not being amazingly good on day one is frustrating for anyone. But having a tool like, ChatGPT or an AI generator that can help get a head start and can help with that kind of foundation of maybe a plugin or of a Roblox script or something that gets you started and gets you kind of going towards it. Maybe just knocks out all the kind of basic stuff. Like you said, it made a menu, it saves settings. Like that's just kind of stuff you have to do with most plugins. But it can knock that out for you. Like it's starting to very quickly turn into a real helper tool for developers that could be, tied right into their workflow and save them hours and hours and hours in a given week.
Yeah. I've been using GitHub Copilot for, gosh, since it came out. I don't know how long that's been, 4 or 5 months. And it's become a huge part of my workflow, saving so much time. I'd probably guess like 40% of time coding. And not that it's like inventing things. It's just, again, learning from patterns that it's learned, from GitHub code and applying that to your project. Because almost anything you do, there's nothing new under the sun, and code is a language that's much more structured and has much clearer rules than like English, for example. So it can actually do, I think, a lot better job of like generating what you want, so half the time, like I've gone from Googling Stack Overflow, and copy pasting and adapting code. Now I just write a comment of what I want the next function to do, and it starts.
That's actually now how I'm coding. I'm writing comments, like I'm doing my rubber ducky or like, my plain coding. And I'm like, and it's like write a function that does this, then I write a function that does this, write a function that does this. And then it spits it all out. I go and, clean it up. And then I say, write it in ES6 or rewrite it in ES, this, and it needs to be in this format. And it does a lot of that kind of like bouncing around that I didn't have to do before, because you used to have a window with my code. And then like, Aaron was saying Stack Overflow, where I'm like, oh, wait, when did they introduce that function style? Oh, wait a minute, where can I use this pattern? And then like, I think it's just another tool in my IDE, right? But it's a lot smoother than, because Stack Overflow, right? I'm not dealing with the downvote nonsense anymore, or the smarminess. So maybe like that's a job we're not going to play violins for, smarmy Stack Overflow guys. But I guess like arguably,
is that a job?
Yeah, but arguably, I think now here's something else, and then maybe that's something. How are those people writing those answers, right? Because in the end, no one works really for free, right? And is it like, were those people in-house at a large agency, company, whatever? Now they've all been swept in the layoffs, and are we going to lose information or lose content generation? And that's a concern I've had. Whereas more people are using AI, or less people are going to stop trying to make new things, and AI relies on new things. Like, and that someone brought that up, that the data set for ChatGPT is pre-2021. So like, it's not like, and I don't want to speak to this now. I think ChatGPT, I don't know how quickly the models are updating, but look how quickly Gutenberg is changing every 3 months, every release, right? Is ChatGPT staying up to date with that, right? Like what was the new thing that was debated in post status? This is a perfect example, the new photo library. And a lot of people were like, why are you including that in my WordPress CMS by default? I don't want the images, to be honest, are a little controversial. And I think it also is generated, via AI. So if I were to say to ChatGPT, which let's try right now, write a function that disables the open library. I forget what that was called, by the way. If anyone knows in the chat, drop it. But the open library from
the open verse
6.2.
Open verse.
Openverse, that's it.
Yep.
So I don't have my stuff open right now, but can it do it? And I don't know. And that's something to keep in mind for new developers. Like, hey, it is giving you the answer from like a dev. But now think about if all four of us, if I was the senior dev and you guys were the juniors, like, and you're like, I'm like, and then you guys write the code using ChatGPT, but then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Did you check it against the new standards? And can ChatGPT do that on the fly, right?
Yeah, and Igor in the chat room brings up a concern related, right? Is what junior devs using AI to generate code without actually understanding it, maybe understanding, is it correct, is it not? Oh, it worked. Okay, well, there's 1,000 ways to do something in technology, right? But is it the right way? Is it the best way? Is it the WordPress way? They still need to learn this, right? So we don't, hopefully not get in a situation or starting to tee up a situation where especially new developers coming into the market or in school or whatever start to rely so heavily on these assistant tools. I think there is a place for them, absolutely. But if you start to rely so much on them that you're not actually understanding what it's producing and learning from it and growing your own skill set, ultimately it's going to really hurt you in your growth in your career, right? Because you're relying on this AI to essentially do your job without actually understanding your job. So, there is a line that people have to straddle here and make sure we're kind of not just using it to basically do our work, but helping us grow and learn in certain ways. So, and we're kind of all going to figure it out together in real time because this is so new.
Yeah. It's already spoiled me. I mean, I've used it probably every day since, ChatGPT, since I found it, to ask it coding questions or scaffolding or stuff like that. And I started using Copilot at about the same time. So it's been interesting to compare those two things. But just the experience of using, I think there was a concern too back like when, Stack Overflow first came about, people, well, you're just going to copy and paste and programmers they're going to forget the fundamentals and the concepts. And, but that, didn't really turn out to be, I mean, Googling Stack Overflow was a part of my workflow previously, just the way that ChatGPT is now, where it's like, you're trying to remember a bit of syntax, right? You're trying to remember the order of arguments. You're trying to remember maybe something more complicated. But something that has really shocked me is how quickly I stopped Googling almost any programming question now, because the results are so poor and time consuming compared to either Copilot, ChatGPT. And I mean, I've played with some of the other, because, there are 24 of these things springing up every day now, and played with some of the others, but they're just so much like, I didn't realize just how bad Google had gotten in terms of being able to find like useful answers to programs and not just
it's a lot of work
through 12 paragraphs of SEO fluff so you could get to the one, WordPress.
I literally had to learn Command F. The magic key is Command F. And even because by the way, it's like, oh, I went on a Himalayan hiking trip and it made me think about functions. What's a function? And it's like this big, and I'm like, dude, I get it. Himalayan hiking trip. Cool, bro. Like, but can you put like, hey, if you don't want to hear about my Himalayan hiking trip, jump to the content. Like, blogs started doing that. And I feel like ChatGPT is that. And like, it's the SEO writing, you hit it nail on the head. It is really getting, and that's another, I guess, like maybe we won't get this content apocalypse of all this ugly content because it's not even, people aren't going to want to read it. They're just turned off of generated content and not even AI content. How much of that content is just people? I wrote an Upwork post that was getting me 3,000 visits a week, right? Because it was getting 3,000 visits a week, it got copied by all these other blogs that all they did was zhuzh the content around so that Copyscape didn't, whatever. All of a sudden they went from 3,000 to like, I get 100 a week on that article now. And again, but I just wrote that article because I got sick of people asking me how I made money on Upwork, right? But now imagine if that was my business. And now like, that's what, even if you write great content, now it's like people are doing all these workarounds to like pivot off your content and rank higher. And it's doing it a service to like people who need the right answer. And ChatGPT cuts through that. That's what it's doing. It's essentially saying like, hey, like, and Google, it's, they're going to lose because like the quality, you're right, it is terrible now.
Yeah. And Google's actually come out and said, the big question, what AI generated content, allowed, not allowed? Is it going to hurt my site if I use it? Google said basically it's against the guidelines as they stand now, because it falls on the category of auto-generated content, which could lead to a manual penalty. So we all know Google, the other search engines, I'm sure, are working on ways to self-identify if a page has been auto-generated or not, trying to flag that. I'm sure there's a lot of companies out there thinking about how this is going to impact higher ed. Essays like, hey, ChatGPT, I got an essay on the Hobbit, help me out here. The next thing you know, you got a paper you can print. There are systems and tools just like plagiarism, but now they got to take it to the next level. Okay, it wasn't necessarily plagiarized, but who generated this? Was it you or was it an AI system? And that is going to be a tough battle, probably a long battle that may never get solved, but they're working on it. So you got to be careful here. And I think it kind of leads into my,
go ahead. It's going to lead to jobs. That will become a job. AI compliance, AI privacy, AI detection. I know a guy whose job.
So AI is going to create new jobs. I like that angle.
No, and it will, because listen, so this is what happens. So I have a friend, when WeWork was like a big thing at the time, I met very interesting people. And so one person I met, it's these laces. If you ever run or do gym stuff, they're like these rubber bands that you can put in your shoes so you don't have to keep relacing, right? But apparently they have the patent on it, but there were millions of Chinese clones just like all over Amazon. So this guy's job that was created because of Amazon, and this is not that show, but Amazon not regulating clones and ripoffs and all this different stuff. His job is just to sue, and he's excited about AI because he's like, great, now I can sue people faster to stop stealing our IP, right? But talking to him, and so now this person, it's going to delete some of those jobs, but he's going to need someone to be like, to build a better like legal bot to build better detection. And that person, it's going to need someone behind the wheel driving it so it doesn't lead to counter litigation, because you can't just go suing people. Like usually you can't go, opening, frivolous lawsuits. And so they have to be careful, right? And so that's a new job. Like, hey, how do we, and I deal with that with privacy. When GDPR came out, GDPR, everyone hates it. It pays, I have this beautiful apartment and lifestyle based on privacy and compliance. You know what I mean? So I'm ready for AI. Bring it. Like, let me build the walls. And even like I'm bringing new initiatives into companies where I'm saying, hey, we should make it that if anyone uploads anything of ours to AI, termination. Because we are like, it's IP. It should be, before you're allowed to take our code and put it into ChatGPT, take our art, put it into ChatGPT, take what we wrote, put it into ChatGPT. Is it IP? Like, is it something? Because that's happening now with Getty, right? Stable Diffusion used scraped Getty to make all those images. Now Getty's like, you better figure out how to back them out of there because you're not generating stuff off of our IP. And that's going to be, those are new jobs, how to reverse engineer that and sue the crap out of people and be compliant. And so I'm excited for that.
Exciting. So this is an AI show. So of course I wanted to use ChatGPT to put together some questions that we could dig into about itself and what it's going to take over. Right. So just like the intro to the show, I asked it, hey, put together some questions. Here's a podcast topic. And it sure enough did. So one that's really related here that I want to kind of talk about is, and I'll read it exactly as it says, just because I think it's fun. What are some examples of industries or job functions that are most at risk of being automated by AI, and how might this impact the broader job market? And I do want to keep it kind of specific to WordPress, even though I know maybe some of the areas we're going to talk about are broad and go outside WordPress. We talked about support. Not necessarily saying it's going to wipe out support, but it's going to be most likely taking over that front line of support with chatbots and things like that, and hopefully make those a little bit more accurate. I'm sure it will. What are some other areas that kind of stand out to us that we think, not necessarily going to be fully replaced, but similar to the support where it might be, augmented a bit with AI? Anything else come to mind?
Recruiting for sure, because if you think about it, I mean, I already am telling people, use ChatGPT, go get 10 profiles that look like jobs you want, load them into ChatGPT and say, rewrite my resume to match these 10 descriptions. And that's like really easy to do. But now think on the opposite side as a recruiter, they're given like 250, resumes a day. They could say, hey, ChatGPT, which of these resumes matches my job description? And of course they still need to use their human eyes. But that will save so much time, because I see people on Twitter all the time like, wow, I'm so excited to recruit, people that fit this thing. Or, oh my God, I got 1,000 applications in one day and I don't know what to do. And so I think that will help a little bit, but it will also make that job like less labor intensive. Recruiting for sure.
I never thought about putting my resume, which I haven't really updated in a long time since I've been working for myself for 15 years, but kind of pushing that through and say, hey, make this better. If I had to put a resume together right now, it'd take some work, and I probably would want some help with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Well, I think one that comes up. Go ahead,
this
Jonathan.
isn't necessarily limited to WordPress, but all low or mid-rent marketing copy. Like I think great
Yeah.
copywriters and great marketing writers are going to be all right, but I think everybody below that top tier has got to be sweating. Just because, number one, most marketing copy is garbage. I mean, most copywriting is garbage. So it's not that difficult to get it to a level where it's sort of commensurate. And then, yeah, so I think, and there's a lot of people still employed in those roles. And I don't see that being something that like Chat GPT helps those people do better necessarily, because it's just a straight up replacement. You don't need to, it's like when you ask Chat GPT, at least at the moment, we should all remember that we're dealing with a moving target, and this could all be different tomorrow. But
right.
At the moment, in order to get useful programming help out of Chat GPT, you need to know what you're asking and how to ask it in some sense. And sometimes you go back and refine and, to get it to clean it up. But to ask it to write a blog post about a topic that its data set's already loaded on, you don't need to know any like specialized prompt, really. You don't need to know any coding principles. Like if you've got, I think, a high school education and a list of keywords, you just type them in and hit return, right?
I think the only thing ChatGPT is not ready for, and this is why I'll always have a job, the CMO who like sees the website and the copy as their personal, like I think it was Seth Godin said, Americans have two God-given rights: to make a movie and to be president. And if you tell them otherwise, they will kill you. Like, because, and every American, and that's the thing, like we all like see ourselves. And so I think sometimes you'll write copy that is just like, okay, here's the copy you need. And I've had ChatGPT do it. Like, so I'm working on documentation right now, right? And I said, hey, ChatGPT, tell me how segment loads the SDK in, and that's now when I'm writing documentation internally for organization, I just write outline thoughts in my little markdown thing while chilling in with my dog. I come into work and I sit down and I put it on the ChatGPT, copy paste into like Confluence. But then I do get people, they're like, could that be worded differently? And I'm like, oh no, you're one of those, because it's not wording it's not wording in support of a goal. It's just because people like to move things around to prove that they touched it, right? And I wonder if like people, I'm glad ChatGPT added a cost, because that's the one cost that people understand, like just annoying clients and annoying customers and annoying coworkers. Like I think that's where there'll still be a job, but it will be limited. Like at Amazon, they go, look, we're not debating button copy. Like the bot will write the 1 million button copy things, but I think like people who want to be more stylistic, it will take a cultural shift to allow ChatGPT to exist, because there's some people, again, they treat everything online as like it's a movie.
Yeah, I think the marketing and content is one that comes to mind for most people, because you're right, it does. I mean, I talked about the intro to the show, and whether it wasn't exactly accurate, it sounded good, right? And a lot of marketing is just sounding good, even if it's not totally accurate, right? So,
but it didn't sound like you, and I think that's the thing, right? Like getting it,
but
like
on
that.
a blog post on a random site, I think I can already predict what's going to happen in some of these companies. They're going to go all in on this, right? Get rid of the entire marketing department. Say, we'll just use GPT. It's perfect. Google's going to figure all this out, and they're going to eventually be like, wow, your entire site's generated by AI. Down you go. Right. And and at that point, it's got to be almost too late to, without a full reset to recover. So, those companies that are going all in on auto generated content, I think are going to have a reckoning day down the road where that is
for sure.
Definitely bites them in the rear end.
Yeah.
I definitely think it can support them. I love using it for like outlines right now, right? Like if we're using it on our blog post too, in a sense, but really it's to help us with outlines, topic ideas, just to start putting stuff together to get something on paper. Because sometimes just getting an outline or just getting started sometimes is the hardest part. And this can give you that jump and get you past that writer's block just to start getting some things on paper. But by the time we're done, it doesn't really resemble the outline that it put together. It just helps us get started. And I think that's a really interesting area that a lot of people should be looking into.
Yeah, I think the general thought that this is going to get rid of jobs, I think that's false. Anytime we see a new technology like wave revolution like this, yes, it changes the distribution of jobs and what kind of jobs there are, but net, it creates new ones. It creates more. It's adding to society. So these tools, like as we talked about, like they're super shiny on the outside, but like in practical use cases, it still requires a human in the loop to do quality stuff. But it can, just like Photoshop did for graphic artists, it can make your job much more efficient, much funner, enable you to unlock like new ways of creativity or generating more things or better things, whether it's with image or text. And so, yeah, it'll get rid of jobs in that respect, that you could work more efficiently, but it'll also create brand new ones, like Jonathan was talking about, a prompt engineer, something things that we haven't even imagined, like that you need to know. Okay, you need to learn the special expertise of knowing how to instruct a AI how to do exactly what you want,
Yeah.
Things
I love
that we
that
can't
prompt
even
engineer. That's such a cool title.
yeah, things we can't even imagine today are going to be just a regular part of the career landscape, So I think all the time when new technology is changing, it's really about being flexible and learning. You have to always be learning because things are always changing, and always be open to new ideas. And when you see this new stuff come out, don't get scared, but instead get excited and play with it and try to figure out how to integrate it into your own workflows and make your own job more efficient, so that you're
That's really good advice.
Still valuable.
I am scared though. like I hope you're right about that net job thing, and that it follows the same pattern, that like you said, we've seen with so many other technologies. But I remember the feeling when I first hit return and like it spit out, like a class, a WordPress plugin and a class. Like my bones felt cold for a couple of seconds. and that's for something that I think is fairly, code pretty complicated, or at least to like for a person to get to that level where they could write what that machine wrote. Most people, you're talking years, right?
Yeah.
To be able to produce code like that from a description like that, I think that's probably years of education and training and, noodling around. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me that I've finally gotten old enough to be alienated by technology instead of immediately embracing everything. Although I have embraced it, I use it every day. But yeah, it's the fact that I don't know. I think it's the fact that it works based off language, that we found a way to sort of make computers understand is the wrong word again, but it's the best one we have. Understand language, parse, like manipulate and understand the world through language. Yeah. That's exciting, but man, that's terrifying. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Any ethical considerations here? I think this is one big area when you start talking about AI, is any kind of, any ethical, any issues, when it's learning language, maybe it's pre-2021, but is there bias baked into the responses it's giving? Is it gender specific versus more gender neutral? Is it just unethical to be doing this in the first place for anything that's going to be public in like a commercial space without maybe disclosing the fact that, hey, AI helped here? Like and this is an all new world, I think. So again, we're all kind of figuring this out together, but what are some of the ethical considerations that we need to be thinking about here?
I can share to that. At NYU, I got really lucky. One of my grad students did a project on the launch of using machine learning to do court cases. So they're using, down in Florida, judges, they get a robo judge first. And the robo judges already have bias baked in because they're going off precedent court cases. And those precedent court cases, they use other data, which, by the way, it's not open. And so the ACLU and other organizations are suing to open the algorithm. And the algorithm takes into place things like zip code, job, age, who your relations are. And now they're building these data sets of this, swooping up data sets and saying, oh, okay, well, like Victor Ramirez and, is friends with Brad Williams, and Brad Williams is a felon, and I'm a felon who just, was released on, let's say like home tracker or whatever. But because I'm in a zip code and I'm near you, that means, according to the algorithm, I might commit a crime again. And so now it's like, we're not going to let this person out because he's moving to a zip code that's near him. And the algorithm doesn't even tell you why. This is a different
Brad Williams. That's a felon, not me.
But it says geodata.
Really turns your life around, man.
Yeah, but it's already happening. And I think, and the other thing too, for me, ethically, there was a Princeton professor who wrote a book called The Rise and Fall of American Growth. And the case that he makes in the book is that section 1 is about what is innovation. And he talks about plumbing was the last great American innovation. Now, hear me out here. People are going to say computers were, right? But if we think about an innovation as something that lifts the overall society, right? We went from, like people, and, for anyone on the call, they used to throw poop in the streets. You literally just had a bucket and you threw it out the window, and that's how you did it, right? Well, then they got plumbing. Great. Okay, great. Now we don't have rats in the street. We don't have bubonic plague spreading around anymore. That was a great innovation. But the thing that tech has done in the last, and it's a great book, I highly recommend it, Rise and Fall of American Growth, is the next thing it talks about is saying that, oh, wait a minute, by the way, the minute we got to computers, we stopped innovating. Because in reality, your stove, now, of course, anyone in marketing and anyone that works at GE is going to argue with me, your stove functions the exact same way it functioned in 1950. There is for an electric stove, there's a metal coil on the bottom. It's contained. Did they add a new timer? Sure. Does it have a digital thing? Sure. Does it have like, some kind of all these like little doodads, but it's still an oven. It still bakes in a particular way. And there's nothing innovative that lifted society. So what I argue and I fear, and this is what this book spoke about, we're spending so much time on AI, right? When the physical world around us, and again, I know this is oddly political, might be collapsing in an environmental disaster, right? And so if AI, and we're putting all this effort towards that, is there an ethical crisis that we are spending all this time on something that benefits consumerism and not society as a whole? And so that's scary, because essentially, like, if all we're going to do is prop up the last 1 million people to like be around with, and they're not even building the robots anymore. So now I'm confused. I'm like, wait a minute, if you're going to build robot servants to get rid of us too, then I guess I understand where this is going. But now they killed all the robotics programs because they think AI is a faster way to raise stock prices, but it's not about raising society anymore. And I think that's an ethical and moral crisis, in my opinion.
Deep thoughts with Victor Ramirez. I like this.
Yeah.
Man. We're
really
getting
just an
into it all
extension,
right.
though. Isn't that just an extension of, I mean, a longstanding criticism of our industry in general, which is that, all the brightest minds, the guys with the PhD,
I agree.
the great programmers, they all got hoovered up by essentially advertising companies, social media companies, right? Even Google's an advertising company.
Yep.
And so all that talent
Finance.
went to, trying to get somebody to click, one more time on a banner ad versus, like you said, doing something with physical science that could actually change the nature of like how people live in a beneficial way.
I think that's true. At the same time, you have, AI algorithms that are learning how to like fold proteins and things like that to generate cures for cancer, new medicines. And I mean, how can you not call that innovation or improving society? I don't know.
That's a good point. At some point, you would hope that an explosion of something like intelligence would in fact lead to improvements in the physical world, right? New ways.
And
to
that's where I
understand
think,
how to
and
manipulate
yeah,
things.
and that's, and I do want to say, I'm not calling it not innovation, but the book argues that we need to be careful how we say the word innovation, because by saying, oh, I can write all my marketing copy and fire my marketing copy guy, is that innovation? Is that good for society? Right. And that's the question that the book poses. Whereas you're right. Okay. But now here's the problem. Which AI, because let's say AI gets expensive, we get to quantum computing and it gets down a little bit, but do we put the AI on the cancer drug, or do we put the AI on more blue pills? Right. Like, and like in reality, like let's put it on the cancer drug, man. Like, we don't need any more blue pills. And I think that's where like we need to direct AI in the right direction.
Yeah, but the cool thing is I don't think it's limited. Like, that's kind of the cool thing about software and technology, is that it allows like exponential like leverage. So your only true limitation is energy, and in the universe that's basically limitless. So it just allows this exponential innovation. You don't have to hire huge armies of people or workers to build that pyramid. When it's all in the software world, you can just exponentially create so much more. And so I think we're seeing that with this AI stuff. Yes, like you have open AI, which is supposed to be open, right? And they have pioneered in making these models like GPT and stuff available to the masses, like in risky ways that companies like Google and Meta and stuff have avoided doing, because of the potential legal risks and ramifications on society. Then you have fully open source projects like the Stable Diffusion, releasing that model open source to where anyone can create, images and stuff, no matter what the moral implications are. They just drop that into the world to see what happens. But it's enabled like a huge new thing of industry, and I think it's enabling things that can improve society as well. So.
The game is changing. I think that is pretty clear. And as a tech nerd, as a parent, as a owner of a company, it's going to be touching all areas of our life, right? This is not just a only at work type of situation. I think we can all agree that we're on the very early cusp of this. So imagine a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, what this could evolve into. I think it's hard for us to imagine, to be honest, because just what we've seen in the last couple of months is pretty damn mind blowing. So add a few more years onto that, and it's only going to get crazier. So definitely an exciting time to be in this world and to experiment. And I appreciate Aaron and Jonathan both coming on, sharing their stories, your projects. I mean, both what you guys are doing is cool. I love people are just exploring and trying things out and putting it out there. I mean, Aaron, you're building in public around this stuff. Jonathan, same thing, so it's fun. I appreciate you both coming on and talking about it. So real quick, I want to go around the horn, give everybody a chance to kind of, again, sum up who you are, where people can find you online, maybe if they want to continue the discussion or check out some of the projects you're doing around AI. So let's start with Aaron.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. That's where mostly I am, Ugly Robot Dev. And I'm always tweeting and sharing the things that I'm building and playing with in AI. And most recently launched yesterday, DocSpot.ai. So you can try that free with your own documentation and see what you can build with that kind of API. So, yeah.
Awesome. And Jonathan, where can everyone find you online?
So my business site is oddjar.com. It's OD as in dog, D as in dog, JAR.com. And I help small to medium-sized businesses there with a variety of WordPress issues. My current specialties are like hosting setups and server optimizations, and then like Gravity Forms, add-ons and entries, and still do some plugin development when something interesting comes along. And then on Twitter, I'm John of House John. John with an H.
I love that.
John of House John. Awesome. Well, this has been an awesome show. Next week, we're back 10 a.m. Eastern on Friday. We're talking about WordCamp Phoenix. WordCamps are coming back. Events are coming back. Hanging out with people is coming back. It's exciting. So please join us next Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. We're going to have two of the organizers of WordCamp Phoenix, Raquel and Carol, are going to join us. So, and I will actually be out at WordCamp Phoenix the very next week. We might even do a little boots on the ground type of situation while I'm out there. So most likely it will be a later show because it is out west, and 7 a.m. there aren't going to be a lot of people for me to talk to. So stay tuned for that. But next week, WordCamp Phoenix back here on the WordPress Friday Hangout. For Victor Ramirez, I am Brad Williams. Thanks for joining us, and have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Later, y'all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.